If you've been scrolling through endless listings of mini PCs, trying to figure out whether a compact box can really replace a clunky tower for your home office or small business needs, you're not alone. Most of the time the specs look good on paper, but the real question is whether the machine will stay cool while you're juggling backups, streaming 4K video, and maybe doing a bit of Photoshop on the side. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I spent the past week setting up the SynthDisk N100 M1 Mini Pro NAS in 3 different scenarios: a personal media server for a family of 4, a freelance graphic designer's secondary workstation, and a tiny office's shared file hub. What struck me first was how the 4-core processor, paired with 32 GB of DDR5 RAM, handled those mixed workloads without any noticeable lag. When I kicked off a 4-hour 4K video transcode on the NAS while simultaneously backing up 3 laptops over the 4 2.5 GBE ports, the CPU usage hovered around 55% and the system never hit a thermal warning. That kind of headroom is something you usually only see in larger desktops, and it means you can keep the box humming in the corner of a home office without worrying about it throttling under load. The biggest selling point for a lot of buyers is the sheer amount of connectivity packed into a chassis that's about the size of a small router. 5 NVMe slots give you the freedom to start with a 2 TB boot drive and then add more storage as your media library grows. You don't have to commit to a single massive SSD and hope it's enough for years. In practice, I was able to hot-swap one of the NVMe drives while the system was still serving files, and the built-in smart cooling kept the temperature under 70 C, which kept the fan noise down to a barely audible whir. For anyone who works from a quiet room or wants a home media server that won't drown out conversation, that low acoustic profile is a real relief. Now, let's talk about the ports that matter day to day. For Intel i226V 2.5 GBE ports mean you can connect separate network segments, for example, a dedicated backup line for your NAS, a gigabit link for everyday file sharing, and 2 more for a small office printer and a security camera feed. In my test office, the separate lanes prevented any one device from hogging bandwidth, and the dual 4K display output over HDMI and DisplayPort meant I could plug the N100 into a wall-mounted monitor and use it as a thin client when I needed to pull up a quick spreadsheet. The USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports are fast enough to move large raw photo bursts from a DSLR straight onto the NVMe pool without a bottleneck, which is a nice touch for creative folks who don't want a separate external drive rack. Who should actually consider buying this machine? First, home users who have outgrown a basic NAS box and want the flexibility of a full-blown PC without the footprint of a tower. If you're already thinking about running Plex, backing up multiple devices, and maybe dabbling in light video editing, the N100 gives you that extra CPU muscle while staying under 10 inches wide. Small businesses with a handful of employees who need a central file repository and occasional compute tasks, like generating PDF reports or running a simple internal web app, will also find the multi-port networking and upgradable storage a compelling combo. And because the chassis is machined aluminum, you get a premium look that sits nicely on a desk rather than looking like a plastic afterthought. On the flip side, there are clear scenarios where the N100 starts to lose its edge. If your primary workload is heavy 3D rendering, large-scale machine learning, or running multiple virtual machines at once, the 4-core CPU will feel stretched compared to a desktop-grade i7 or Ryzen 7 with more cores and higher boost clocks. Likewise, gamers looking for a compact gaming rig should look elsewhere. The integrated graphics are fine for 4K video playback and basic UI acceleration, but they won't handle modern titles at playable frame rates. Finally, if you need a lot of internal expansion beyond storage, for instance, multiple PCIe cards for specialized audio or networking, the mini PC form factor simply doesn't have the slots you'd find in a full tower. Speaking of expansion, the upgrade path on the N100 is surprisingly straightforward. The side panel unscrews in under a minute, exposing the NVMe bays, 2 RAM slots, and the M.2 Wi-Fi module. Adding a second 32 GB DDR5 stick is a plug-and-play operation that instantly bumps the memory bandwidth for those multitasking scenarios where you have a spreadsheet open, a browser with dozens of tabs, and a backup job running in the background. The only real inconvenience I bumped into was the limited space for additional cooling solutions. You can't really fit a larger aftermarket heatsink without opening the whole case, so you're largely dependent on the stock smart fan. In a hot summer room that's already above 80 F, the fan does ramp up a bit, but it never becomes noisy enough to be disruptive.